Hey there, let me ask you this. Have you ever had a challenge when you're meeting with a prospective investor or client, kind of warming them up? Like they show up for their call and they're all don't really know much about you and you have to spend a lot of time explaining the basics over and over again. Well, if so, listen to this episode because I've found a solution that's working really well for me and for my clients. So welcome to this episode of the Meandering Marketer. I'm Dave Dubois, zooming in from beautiful Lake Okanagan, actually Peachland to be specific. Tell you a little bit more about my failed trip to Rattlesnake Island after I tell you about pre-framing your sales calls. So if you've ever been on a sales call or an investor presentation and you have to spend a lot of time going over the basics, who you are, what you do, what real estate's all about, what syndications are, et cetera, whatever your thing is, then you might try something that's working really well for myself and my clients. It's called pre-framing your call. So I got this idea, I got reminded about this idea from good old Alex Hormozy, brilliant guy, highly recommend him. And the idea is that between the time that you book your sales call or your discovery call, whatever you call it, and the time they actually show up for it, to send the person a short little video that ideally pre-frames everything about you, the big basic broad strokes that you need them to know. So for example, when I'm working with syndicator clients, the idea would be, especially if the person has no idea about real estate investing, has no idea about apartment buildings, has no idea about syndications, do a video that explains big broad strokes what that's all about. So what we've been doing for our clients is I'll jump on a Zoom with them and I'll interview them as if it's an interview for my Property Profits podcast and ask them all the basics. Hey, what do you like about real estate investing? Why is it your preferred asset class versus stocks, bonds, crypto, everything else out there? And within real estate, there's all sorts of different ways. Why do you focus on your thing, whatever that is, multifamily, industrial, self-storage facilities, mobile home parks, whatever it is that they do? And then how does it work when you're working with investors? How do you do a syndication deal or how do you do a fund of funds? So it just kind of explain the big broad strokes. And by interviewing them, I'm positioning them as the expert, and it works very, very well. So we do this interview and we plunk it in their YouTube channel, and we put the link to that in the Calendly confirmation email for the meeting, the reminder emails, all that kind of good stuff. And it was a good idea, but it wasn't working very well until a client of mine, Danny, came up with a good idea. He said, you know what? When I'm booking them in, so in Danny's case, he's one of my podcaster clients. So he does the podcast interview. He invites the person to a discovery call after the interview. They say yes. And then he says, hey, by the way, when you get the confirmation email from Calendly, please check it out. And there's a link in there to a short video. If you could watch that before our call, it'll make things much more efficient for you, much more streamlined, and things will just go a lot smoother. So that has been working like gangbusters for Danny. So now people, when they're coming on to his discovery call, they already have a really good idea of what it is that he does and how he does it. And quite often they're going, hey, skip that basic part of the presentation. Just show me how the deals work and how you can help me or how I can get involved. So he's starting to really go gangbusters with that. It's just a massive shortcut. And I highly recommend that if you're doing discovery calls or sales calls, you insert a little pre-frame video. You don't have to do an interview. You can do it just standalone, do it yourself kind of thing. And that will just streamline everything a lot better for your presentations. I've started doing this for my sales calls as well. It's working a lot better. People are coming in. They've got a good idea of what it is I do and how I do it. Then we can just get down to the brass nuts and the detail type stuff. All right. So that's the meandering marketing tip for today. And like I mentioned, I am at beautiful Okanagan Lake in British Columbia. This is one of the most famous lakes in Canada. The Okanagan area is kind of Canada's version of California. So there's lots of orchards around here, lots of vineyards, lots of wineries around this area. And Okanagan Lake is just a huge, huge freshwater lake that is very, very popular with people for vacationing. There's lots of amazing beaches around here. And across the lake for me right now, there's an ominous named island called Rattlesnake Island. And I was trying to paddle out there today And I made it about halfway across the lake. And then I chickened out. You can't really tell it from here, but it's kind of windy. It's pretty choppy. The waves were a lot higher than I felt comfortable with. I started taking on a little bit of water. I'm flying solo here today, so I said, to heck with it. And I came back. But I really want to go check out that island because there's an interesting story about it. An entrepreneur's dream dashed. So the story goes, and I haven't fact-checked this completely, so don't take my word for it completely, but a gentleman from Lebanon, from Beirut, the 1950s, immigrated to Canada, started from scratch as a barber, became a very successful business guy in the local area, and bought that island, Rattlesnake Island, with the idea of creating like a little vacation paradise, a little, mini, well, not Disneyland, but amusement parky type thing there. So he bought the island. He installed on there a mini golf course. He built a pyramid on the island. He had plans for, camel tours. And so he had this wonky idea for kind of a combination Middle East, Canada theme. And then we got a own version of Loch Ness Monster here called the Ogopogo. So he's going to feature that, and he's going to have submarines and blah, blah, blah. All this kind of stuff. He had great, great plans. And he sunk his life earnings into that project. And to be nice, he invited the local townsfolk to go check out the island for free and play mini golf or whatever. And some local folks got their nose out of joint, complained to the government about this, that, and the other thing, didn't like the idea of development, not in my backyard, all that kind of stuff. And he got shut down. And he spent like a decade fighting that, going through bureaucracy, government red tape. Bottom line is he went from being a very well-to-do local business guy to pretty much almost going insane, going bankrupt, getting divorced, ruined his life. This is a crazy story. This is the part I need to double check. But I actually saw a newspaper clipping, so I think it's true. He actually went back to Lebanon, to Beirut, recruited 3 of his cousins. They all got guns. They stormed the Canadian embassy in Beirut, held everybody hostage for a few days to get attention to his plight, which he did. Amazingly, so this is like the early 1970s. Amazingly, they got out of there. He got allowed back to Canada without going to jail, settled with the government for like $150,000 or something like that. And I believe lived out the rest of his days not far from here. Tried to build a little castle that didn't go anywhere, and just ended up kind of a frustrated guy. So anyhow, that's the story of Rattlesnake Island. Supposedly the mini golf remnants are still there. The foundation of his pyramid is still there. So I was going to try and check that out. I guess not today, but maybe another time. Anyhow, that's a long-winded little episode today, but I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you got something out of it. So again, if you're doing discovery calls or sales calls, try inserting a pre-frame video before that. Big tip is point that out, let people know, encourage them, ask them to watch it before they jump on the call with you. It'll just make things go a lot smoother. Take care. We'll talk to you on the next one.
This episode is brought to you by the SF Commercial Property Conversations podcast, hosted by Bruce Bean. Dive into insightful interviews with the movers and shakers of California commercial real estate. Listen now at sfcommercialconversations.com.